Hi, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there these last few hours of VR Fest. They're looking for my slides right now, so I'm just going to vamp a little bit on the beginning of my presentation, and then we'll skip over it. I'm writing a new book, so I should be talking about my old book, it's a year old, so it's an old book about virtual and augmented reality. And I talked about it earlier today in Gary's book club. But today, or this afternoon, I want to talk to you about my new book. And that's coming out in March. And it's got a lot of the ideas that you just heard Alvin expressing about where VR and AR are headed. So first of all, for those of you who don't know me, I won't belabor my resume, but I was the chief operating officer of Virtual World Entertainment in the 90s, which was a Disney spin-off. We did cab-based simulation in retail environments. We built 35 locations on 4 continents in 3 years. Then a little thing came along called the internet that completely disrupted us and more or less ended the business, although the business had some fundamental problems, as does all LBE. It has, what I like to say is too many seats during the week, not enough seats on the weekend, right? There's not enough seats when the people are there. Unlike a movie theater, you can't make up for a bad week on the weekend. After leaving Disney, where I spent almost 11 years, I became an executive at a little company called America Online in suburban Washington, D.C. They're in Washington, D.C. because, like many technology companies, they started out in defense. And many of the people in their technology team were ex-DARPA people. So they lived there. That's where government business takes place. So that's where AOL was. I was with them for 4 years. And then I started doing startups. And the first few were really easy, and then the last few were really hard. But I certainly have learned a lot about how big companies work and little companies work, and about business in general, although my interest and my heart has always been with the arts and with artists. But with my 35 years of experience at the intersection of technology and entertainment, I have a unique perspective, and a perspective that is probably a little different than most technology writers, right? Most technology writers are professional writers. I am not a professional writer, but I happen to write. When I talk to people in the industry, I'm talking to them like somebody who's going to invest in their company, right? I want somebody to tell me, are you doing due diligence or are you interviewing me, right? Because the truth is, a real reporter doesn't want to learn all about you. A real reporter wants you to answer the questions he needs answered to write the story in 4 hours. And unlike me, he doesn't get, or she doesn't get, all that superfluous information that is never going to make it into a 700-word article, which is about 500 to 700 words is the average length of an online tech article, which is really quite short when you take into consideration the average chapter in my book was 4,000 words, and that the entire book, well, my first book was 50,000 words, the second one's twice as long, because it really is a deep, deep dive into AR, which is very nuanced, right? VR is just one thing. It's the fully occluded digital world, but AR is many things. It goes from assisted reality all the way through diminished reality. Two new R words, diminished reality and assisted reality is new to me, but that's what people are starting to call the monocular micro displays that hold instructions and directions and other things for in enterprise. So are we close to my slides, or is that? Oh, it is? Okay, so let's just run it. So we'll skip over the first few slides. This is a brand new presentation, you guys. I'm trying it out on you guys. So that's the video. I don't need that. Just do the other one. The path forward for VR. I don't think VR is dead by any means. I think it's ridiculous. It's not a fad. It's not going away. The killer apps in enterprise are astoundingly successful. So let's skip over that one, skip over that one, skip over. See, that's the shit I was vamping. Okay, a few things I know are true. These are sort of the filter that I use when I talk about that I use when I look at this industry and when I talk about technology. So the three things I knew were true. You know these things are true also. The first one is that technology succeeds when it takes what we're already doing and lets us do it better, faster, and cheaper. The second thing is that people are the killer app. You look at your phone 400 times a day. Did you know that? Why do you do that? Email, social media. It's your connection to other people that is meaningful, not technology. And then the last thing is that we always overestimate the short term, and I think VR has been a huge victim of this, and underestimate the long term. And so that's sort of my point of view in both of my books. Next slide, please. So that was my first book. Next slide, please. A few of the ideas in my first book, AR and VR are not the same. Right? VR is a fully occluded digital world, but AR is many things. But it requires the real world. AR is a tool. It's like a club, whereas VR has a spiritual aspect. That's what attracted most of us in the beginning, this idea that you could be in heaven or hell or in another planet and other people could be present with you there is an incredibly compelling idea that's been the topic of fantastic movies and stories for decades now. AR is more nuanced. Here's our problem. Aside from games, VR has no readily apprehensible value proposition. Let me expand on that since you're probably thinking, I thought he said he wasn't a VR hater. If I stood up on this stage 2 years ago at CES, I would have said, well, the problem with the technology is that it's tethered and there isn't enough content yet and it's too expensive. And if you solve all those problems, everybody will do VR. That's not true. That is totally wrong. The truth is that VR is not a game machine. And so if it's not a game machine, most people don't know what it's good for. They don't know what's in it for them. They don't know what they're already doing that it's going to make better. Next slide. Oh, and so mobile AR is hot because everyone has a smartphone. That's an easy one. That's a chip shot. But here's the funny thing, of course. Even though everyone has AR, their phones are AR capable, you don't download AR apps. AR is like GPS, right? It's not a thing to like or dislike. It's not a thing, that you customize. It's a quality of a good app. So Google Maps will get a lot better. You won't say, oh, I've got an AR Google Map. No, you'll say, wow, it's all got great wayfinding now. And nobody cares how they did it. So that's an AR app. And it's taking something we're already doing and making it better. And the final sort of insight I had from writing that book is that the world will be painted with data. And what I mean by that is every person, every place, everything will be machine readable. So the browser in your camera will be able to detect where there is invisible content and reveal that to you if it's relevant and if you want it, which is where AI comes in. Next. So enterprise AR, doing fantastically well. Consumer AR, there is no consumer AR. That's a contradiction in terms. There's no consumer AR. Nobody downloads AR apps. Consumers don't know AR exists. It's just a buzzword to people. Let's take a look at the rest of this. There's no AR cloud. There's no standards. There's no software. There are bad form factors with the cell phone. It's not something we're already doing. And there's no proof that anyone wants to wear a phone on their face. There's absolutely no proof of that. So we're all excited about AR. It's pretty amazing. I see some great products like the Blade from Vuzix, which is a consumer quality device. It's a real product. It feels very solid, not like a lot of the demos you see on the floor. Yet I don't really know if people want to do that. Do you want to tweet, have heads up tweets? I don't know. So I think a lot of people are making a pretty big freaking assumption that people want to do these where there is absolutely no proof. In fact, there's ample proof to the contrary. Let's keep going. Okay, so VR's problems are a little more pronounced. We talked about the value proposition. You know, room scale is an issue. Most people don't have enough room to have room scale, so that's a little obstacle. There are only 20 million game machines in the United States right now. That's a little obstacle. Bandwidth is an obstacle. Who has, I mean, maybe it's just my cable modem. Does it take other people several hours to download substantial VR content? You know, it is a problem. Oh, it's going to take an hour to download this. Take off my headset and go do something else and come back. And then, by the way, I need all these extra hard drives. I have like a drawer full of extra hard drives with VR experiences on them that I'm never going to do again. Again, we're imprisoned by apps, right? Without web VR, without easy access to an infinite amount of great content, which is what we are used to consuming on the internets, as long as it's trapped in apps that we have to pay for, it's not going to be a consumer product. And then, as I said, storage is an issue. You can't read, you can't message, and you can't see. So that's why we say it's lonely inside of VR. Next slide. But there is good content for VR, by the way. All that is about to change. That's the good news. The bad news is it probably won't change as quickly as we all want. Convergence is the idea behind my second book. What convergence means is a number of technologies coming together at once to create a new and better thing. I'll give you a couple of examples. Electricity and the telephone. Can't have one without the other. The combustion engine and the airplane, right? Because only gliders were possible. You could put a steam engine in an airplane. You had to have a combustion engine. The PC and the internet. And we are coming to a convergence moment now, which is AR, AI, and 5G. Keep going, this is a little collage I did. I thought I would have a clicker. Next slide. Oh, there's a mock of the cover. It's pretty sexy, right? I really like it. It's got my name on it. But what 5G, what convergence means, and the world that we will live in as a result of this convergence is going to be dramatically different than the environment that we're operating in today. So much so that I would posit every device that we're talking about, including the wonderful new device from HTC, are interim devices, right? We're not going to be wearing like the Vive Focus like a giant box on our face. You know, the form factor, because if you're in a zero latency 5G environment, the form factor will be different, right? All you will need to do, for example, AR glasses is a 5G connection, the optical system, and a gyroscope. And then everything else comes down from the cloud. Same thing is going to be true for VR. No more bandwidth problem, no more storage problem. But here's the kicker. Here's the most important idea. World scale, free roaming, multiplayer VR. That will change everything. All of a sudden, we've got a lightweight headset. We can go out into the world. We can do something social. And the world will appear to be different to us because we're, you know, in this layer, so to speak, of the cloud that is carrying the information about that game. And then there are people who are plugging into that layer and playing with you. So I think that, and when I say playing, it not play necessarily. It could be work, it could be all sorts of things. But, you know, it's this idea of a multiplayer environment that is not restricted by a room or a place. The other thing that's going to happen as a result of this convergence is we're going to see, and again, this was something Alvin was talking about, and I don't know, maybe I got this idea from him at some point, but you know, this idea that we'll have interoperable AR and VR devices. The difference between the devices is not going to be that great. The difference in the use cases is going to be dramatic, but it'll be the same device. That's clearly where it's going. People aren't going to have AR glasses that they wear to go to the store and VR glasses that they wear at home to watch a movie or do instead of a phone call or whatever. That's silly. No one would do that. But world scale free roaming VR, think about it. What an incredible idea. We could be like the people in Ready Player One, running down the street, kicking the air, you know, in our own crazy little worlds. It probably won't, obviously, if you're walking down the street. You can't occlude the real world because you'll get killed. So you could have a chaperone window, and again, people are going to try all sorts of strategies to see what this means and how to use it. But I think it's going to unleash a wave of creativity and disruption that we can't even predict sitting here. Look at what GPS did for mobile computing, right? What it did for the smartphone. It created Uber, it created Seamless, it created a huge range of businesses that were based on GPS. So people often say, what is Apple's game? When is Apple going to get into AR? Apple's building AR glasses. Tim Cook keeps bringing up AR. What is going on there? My prediction, I have no inside information. I would say to you, I believe Apple is waiting for the convergence. They're going to skip all the stuff that HTC and Oculus are doing. They're not going to introduce a device until there is convergence. That's going to take 5 years at least. I know the phone companies are here, the telcos are here, everybody is pimping 5G, but it's a stock play. 5G is hard. It's going to take a while. It's going to be transformative, but it's not going to be like 4G, which took about 3 or 4 years. This is harder. For example, 5G hates Windows. That's a problem. Now, if you talk to people in the tech industry, in the telecom industry, they're like, oh, well, that's temporary. We're going to fix that. And, you know, the fact is it needs 4 times as many repeaters as 4G. And it doesn't penetrate to the interior of houses. So you may need a series of sort of cable modems. They say they'll be the size of your hand, like a pack of cigarettes, and you'll put one in your window. But if you live in a house, probably that repeater won't repeat into your backyard. So you'll put another repeater in your kitchen so that you get full coverage in your home. So that's the current tech. If they don't solve that, that's what it would take to make 5G, you know, truly, truly ubiquitous. So there are issues, but I think that's what Apple is going to wait for because it makes such a huge impact in what the form factor is. Next slide. So, world scale free roaming, combined devices, mixed reality. Welcome. These are the beginning. These are the beginning of world scale free roaming. This is where we're going to learn about what that means. Next slide. Vive Cosmos, I don't know. World scale free roaming. Next. Standalone VR after the convergence, right? Better form, much smaller. World scale roaming, massively multiplayer. True mixed reality, pick up a stick, it's a torch. And also capable of diminished reality. Think about that, right? I could have a party in this room out here or erase all you guys. So that's the kind of thing that diminished reality. You could really gaslight somebody. Again, going back to Ready Player One, there's that scene where they totally gaslight the guy and he thinks he's out of VR when he's still inside of VR. That's diminished reality. You could do that. I don't think it's going to be done anytime soon, but it's theoretically possible someone could do it. So VR becomes MR, really. You're not going to spend that much time in VR. Most of the time you're in the world, you're working, you're out, you're doing things, and that's an AR activity. But on a Saturday afternoon, you may decide to participate in some kind of massively multiplayer, a world-scale free roaming exercise. Who knows, maybe it's Wizards Unite 3. And so you will program your device or switch your device to the mode that would be most compatible with that activity. We are a multitasking culture. You know, that's one of the problems with VR is it doesn't fit very well into the way we live, right? I don't get my social media hit of dopamine while I'm in VR for 2 hours. And I think that, we are mad multitaskers, and that has become, part of who we are now in this technologically driven world. What are your plans for the next 4 years? Well, here are a few areas that are going to grow and should generate some money, at least for the right players. Location-based VR, every time somebody gets in a headset, whether they're in a mom-and-pop VR-cade or, whether they're a 2-bit circus or a family entertainment center, a library, any place they put a headset on is good for us. Magic Leap. Okay, the device isn't all that yet, but if you talk to those guys, they don't even care about that. They're looking at device 3, right? They're also thinking a lot about the convergence, by the way. So they're thinking they're going to have a completely different device for convergence. VR is making tremendous strides in healthcare. It is really dramatic, especially in psychology and training of physicians. VR in education ought to take off with these low-cost standalone devices. And I do believe as libraries have become sort of computer centers, so they will become VR centers ultimately. And then, of course, everybody talks about VR and AR in enterprise. And so for the next 4 years, if you're really looking to make money in this business, that would be an awfully good way for you to, the awfully good thing for you to focus on. And one example of that is Magic Leap is trying to pivot to enterprise. That's where they think the use cases for them are pre-convergence. So the path forward for VR is MR. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you buy my current book so that I can get you to buy my next book, because once the next book comes out, why would you want the old book? So although the old book has a lot more about VR, the new book, yes, do you want me to sign that? I would love to do that. But say hi, I'll be around a little while, then I have to get going to another event. My feet are killing me, I'm exhausted. I'm sure those of you who have been over to the convention center must feel the same way. I think there are a lot more people in Las Vegas this year, so it is a zoo out there. It took me an hour to get here from the Venetian, which, I could have walked it in half that time. So anyway, enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you for listening to me, and have a great night.
That was awesome. Thank you, Charlie.
Sure, thanks.
Can you plug your book one more time? What is the name of your present book?
My present book is called Charlie Fink's Metaverse, an AR-enabled guide to VR and AR. And what that means is you read the book with your phone in your hand. Your phone is generally sitting right next to you anyway, and it reveals, animations and other kinds of invisible data painted onto the book. Incredible. Thanks.
All right, thank
you,
everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.